William Shakespeare once wrote, "The play's the thing." Tennessee Williams lived up to those words when he wrote A Streetcar Named Desire. It made its Broadway debut in December 1947 and is considered one of the most influential plays of the 20th century. Full of raw sexuality and visceral emotion, it starred Jessica Tandy, Kim Hunter. It introduced American audiences to the talent of a young Marlon Brando. New York Times critic Brooks Atkinson said at the time, "Williams has not forgotten that human beings are the basic subject of art. Out of poetic imagination and ordinary compassion, he has spun a poignant and luminous story." Just a few years later, Brando would reprise his role as Stanley Kowalski in Elia Kazan's film adaptation, and here is a look at that.
You must be Stanley. I'm Blanche.
Oh, you're still sister.
Yes.
Oh, hi. Yeah, where's the little woman?
In the bathroom.
Oh. Well, where are you from, Blanche?
I live in Oriole.
Oriole. Oriole, huh? Oh, yeah, that's right, Oriole. That's not my territory. Man, look, it goes fast in the hot weather. You want a shot?
No, I rarely touch it.
Well, there's some people that rarely touch it, but it touches them often. Hey, you mind if I make myself comfortable? My shirt is sticking.
Please do.
Be comfortable. That's my motto up where I come from.
It's mine, too. It's hard to stay looking fresh in hot weather where I haven't washed or even powdered. Here you are.
Well, you know, you gotta be careful. You're sitting around a damn thing, get you cold. Especially when you've been exercising hard like bowling is. Well, you're the teacher, aren't you?
Yes.
What do you teach?
English.
Well, I never was very good English student. How long are you here for?
Well, I don't know yet.
You gonna shack up here?
I thought I would if it's not inconvenient for you all.
Good.
Traveling wears me out.
Well, take it easy. Not those cats.
A Streetcar Named Desire has now been given new life thanks to the collaboration of two remarkable women. In a new production that originated at the Sydney Theatre Company, Cate Blanchett stars as Blanche under the direction of Liv Ullmann. Joining me now, Cate Blanchett and Liv Ullmann. I'm pleased to have them both at this table together. Welcome. It's great to see you.
Thank
both
you.
in green.
Both in green. We didn't ring ahead.
No.
Now, there is a story that I've read that the two of you with your husband are in London, perhaps, having a meal, perhaps, and you're talking about how you might collaborate because A Doll's House, a film you were going to make together, was gone by the wayside. And someone, your husband, said, "How about Streetcar?" Silence. You think for a moment and you're fearful because this is a tough role, and you say,
my heart jumped of happiness, and I know I really became red in my face of real eagerness to do this, because if there is a perfect Blanche that I would know of, it would be her. And then I think this was also something that you wanted to do very, very much. And we had been silent for a while and talked about Ibsen and things, and suddenly this came, and we became alive, all three of us. And that same evening, your husband just gave me the book. He went to buy it, although he had a premiere himself in London. I
mean, it's a gift of a play, really, and I think it's what's been remarkable about. I mean, it's often I think projects choose you in a way rather than you choosing the project. Not to get too sort of metaphysical about it, but because he's been so influenced by Chekhov, and you know, Chekhov was obviously one of his favourite writers, you feel like you're doing Tennessee Williams and Chekhov and Ibsen, and you're doing the Greeks, because he references all of those, you know, wonderful forms of theatre. And I think that that's what Liv has really unlocked, is it's very easy to make this play very camp or very melodramatic, but you've got to find a balance between all of those things, and to bring out the human humour in it, which I think you've really You've really done. It's a gift. It's an absolute gift.
Were you for a moment scared of playing Blanche?
Terrified. Utterly terrified.
Yes.
I mean, I think there are very few theatrical works, very few plays which exist as absolutely in the world of cinema as they do in the theatrical world. And this is a masterpiece in both works. And Elia Kazan's work was clearly groundbreaking, but also the performances that were elicited in that. I think it's a play that we all feel we know perhaps better than we really do, because it exists in the shadow of the film. And so I think part of our job was really, and that's where Liv was fearless, is to actually set that aside and just really to examine what was there on the page.
And you didn't watch the film?
No, I mean, obviously I'd seen it many, many times, and you know, I voraciously will take up any references. I'll sort of take anybody else's
But
suggestions.
you didn't do it because you'd already seen it, or you didn't do it because you didn't want to see it at that time?
I thought part of the task was to not be influenced by the film. And I think because it's somehow seeped into popular culture, I mean, even people who haven't seen the play still know Stella, they still know all, and there's so many lines, the kindness of strangers being the most obvious ones, but there's so many lines that have been pulled out and into common parlance. So in a way it's seeped into our bones, and so I sort of feel like it was there as a reference point anyway.
The first thing people notice who've seen the play is that Stanley is not the center. Blanche is at the center.
I don't want to disagree with that, but I do feel that anyone who is on the stage, they are the center. I feel a lot, of course, is her story, because she is the one confronting everybody as they are confronting her. But I think as opposed to that movie where Marlon Brando really was the center, which I'm so surprised by, because Stella Blanche is the one whose story he is telling.
And she's the precipitating agent.
In a way, yes. But they are all doing it to each other. They are all trying to defend who they are, because they all feel threatened. Not only she, but the other people feel threatened too. So yes, she is the center, I think, the way Tennessee Williams wanted it. But I feel anytime Stanley is on the stage, it is between the two of them, or when they are three, it's between the three of them. And that's where I think Cate also is so fantastic, because it could also be so easy to make this one-woman show, and it never is. It is whoever is there, that's who we are looking at, what is happening between them, the lack of recognition of who they are, the lack of seeing who the other people are. That's what the play is about.
I think it's an interesting thing, though, about the perspectives on a play, and I think that's what makes a play a masterpiece. It can travel through time, and like a rolling stone, it gathers greater meaning. And I think when the play hit audiences and when the film was made, it was a different type of America that was being championed. That every man, anyone can be king. You know, I'm the king of my borough, and also the performance style that Brando really opened up. That's part of it, but it's also, I think, that sort of capitalist, industrialized America that Stanley represented. Because the play, in the end, if you sort of talk about it on a metaphorical level, it is about the death of poetry, and that's crushed, that flame of inspiration that Blanche represents, that fragile, ephemeral poetry is extinguished. And I think now an audience looks at the play and thinks about what we've lost, that we've actually lost those intangible, ephemeral parts of where's the poetry in America, where's the idealism in America. And I think that it's really audiences who are perhaps, rather than the production itself, looking at the play through a different prism than when it was first.
Speaking of prism, you look at this through a Norwegian prism.
Yes, but you know, deep down we are all deep within ourselves, very much alike. And I think maybe coming from Norway or coming from Australia, we see things that are very interesting to us because it seems different for us.
That Americans might not have seen.
which they maybe see but not find so important, but because it's new to us, references, and so we like to bring it out, because to us it is it's different. And I really think it's good for a play, like it's good for Henrik Ibsen, that foreigners do it. You know, they put humor in where Norwegians don't really see the humor, and then we can put humor into this where maybe Americans don't see that humor, because it's new for us.
But notwithstanding everything you just said, you know, you spent some time learning about the blues and learning the context of the time and the American South and the culture of the American South.
And you see, maybe
even though you live in America.
Yeah, but maybe some Americans wouldn't do that because they would think they knew the blues.
Right,
I know I don't know the blues. And I even went to a professor and had classes because I wanted
you pick up the
to know. No, but I learned a lot, and it was good when I met the sound man, who is fantastic, because I knew what I wanted, and then he could come with suggestions where I knew enough to say yes or no, and where I also could present what I was interested in. And I think that could have slipped by an American, because they wouldn't know that they didn't know.
Suppose you had decided to collaborate on a movie. How would you have approached it differently? You.
How would I have approached it differently? Well, I obviously it depends on what the material is, and that's where our conversations really began. But in the end, I mean, and now having worked together, I imagine you still mine and hopefully make the furrows as deep as you do when you're in a play. I mean, the thing that I relish is the length of the exploration process, particularly when you've got to perform things for, I mean, we've now been doing it 14, 15 weeks. You do need to sort of...
From Sydney to London to here.
Yeah, we went to Washington, which was, was really interesting doing it in Washington.
Why?
I think because well, it was our first sort of port of call in America, and it was an interesting sort of diplomatic exchange. We were given some funding for the federal government for a bit of soft diplomacy. To you know, the Australian Chamber Orchestra went, the Sydney Theatre Company went, and Sydney Bangarra Dance Company, an Aboriginal dance company, went with works. And it's that thing about having cultural exchange. And it was the first time I'd spent any significant time in Washington, and so to perform for that audience, having been in Sydney, it's what Liv was saying before, so many reference points suddenly came alive, so many, you know, we all speak English, but we're not homogenous cultures, and you realise how there's a gulf between us, and actually performing arts can actually bridge that gulf and provide common ground. So it's it is an interesting political tool.
Yeah.
But also when you say about the film,
yes,
that can also happen in the theatre when you have someone like Cate, who I just think is so marvelous, and I've seen all her films. You can also do that in the theatre. You can make a close-up, which isn't always done in a theatre. You can have the moment where someone like her understands and sees something, which is a close-up and directed to the audience, and then it goes on and directed to the other people. And during rehearsals, it was fantastic. You know, the first week, I just wish I had a camera, that I could have frozen that moment when the understanding and the creativity started to work within Cate. And just to remember that, I wanted and hoped to be able to see that in the audience. So don't immediately turn to the other people. Let us have that moment. And that's...
And you could have done that with a camera.
That I could have done with a camera, but we can also do it in the theatre. We can
thought about that.
Keep that moment.
But yes, but what you're saying about, because obviously of your deep and extraordinary work and life in the cinema, that maybe there's an inherent understanding about what a close-up means, because Liv often spoke about perspectives, which I don't really think I've experienced with other directors and on the stages, and understanding that the audience is there and you speak to the other characters through the audience and complete that circle. But you've often talked about give this bit to the audience and actually the other characters are not party to this. So it's like, you know, the intimacy that one develops with a film camera is that you're speaking through the camera to the audience, and oftentimes you're not actually talking to the other characters, and so it's...
How did she surprise you?
All the time. All the time. You know, when I was young, her age, you know, I could have thought I could have done Blanche, and I know from the very first rehearsal when we were on the floor, I just knew how uninteresting what I would have liked to do, and I think I will tell her maybe this is how I would, because watching her, because already the moment she is on the floor, it starts to happen, because she is such a creative soul, if I can use such a word, an inner life that really shines through, and it really enriched my life, and I really wished that I had had a camera, but so many of those moments are there.
Do you think you knew that moment, Cate? I mean, that she's describing, where she thought you got it?
She got it all the time. So
yeah, but there was a moment in which you sort of said there was a...
But you mustn't say it, you see. I did that once, I remember. I said, oh, you know, when you hear that music, and oh, you mustn't say it, because then you have almost killed it. You mustn't...
So you didn't say to her, no, you've got it.
Certain moments you must not say, because then you're trampling into somebody else's fantasy, but you just make sure that it will be there. But if you say, that was incredible, the way you are looking at me now, you have done it. Now, and I know I did that once, and I remember she said, you know, and I hate it too when they do that. You just have to know it.
You also said about her that sometimes you wish she would work without makeup, because her face speaks so well.
Yeah. Well, she's beautiful with makeup, but I've never seen...
If she just removed the wig lifts.
I've never seen a face like that without makeup, and you will also see it when you see the play, that there are times when she has no makeup, but, you know, she could have done the whole thing for me without makeup, because she has an extraordinary face. And I do actually know when I played theater, no comparison, I liked the thing to play with no makeup. But I did not have your skin. I didn't have what you have. No, this happens. No, this happens to be true. I had things too, but sometimes without makeup, you know, everything comes through in a way that when you cover it, something...
It's a very naked play, actually, and it's all about the moments when people attempt to assume a mask and when they're revealed to themselves, and part of the process was... And you know, if you read Tennessee Williams' letters, he is so... He's often so unmasked in letters to his friends, and he writes so. And look, having never met him or known him, and probably all his friends would shut me down. But it's such a he writes so personally. Not that these plays are at all autobiographical, I would imagine, but it's finding. I think in order to know this play, you sort of need to know the man really, and how emotionally brave he was. And you know, in his own life, and I think that that's part of being naked in front of the audience emotionally.
Yeah, and so much that the audience is very much part of the play, and that's why I think it's so brilliantly written too, because he does so much for laughs. You know, specifically in the first act. So the audience starts to feel safe. And we are in the theater, and we're recognizing this teacher with her intellect and everything, and she's threatened by this man, and things may happen, and then we laugh, and we're part of it. And because they feel safe, suddenly comes the second act, and they are part of it. And it goes so differently, and it goes so scary, and they cannot stop it. And that's how he wrote it, and that's such a great way to have the audience in the end realize what this play is about. If we only had recognized each other, you know, we wouldn't have harmed each other the way we did. And it's not only she who is harmed, but she's harmed the worst. But the other people are also tremendously harmed.
Your sense is that she is not mad, but she's going through agony.
I can't. It's her Blanche, but I think the anxiety is so tremendously big that in the end you do things. And she's a drunk. You know, she's a drunk. I don't know when you become a drunk and when you're not, but she drinks a lot. And I think the combination of this, and you are so threatened, and nobody sees you, and when you then tell the truth, and the truth is mortal, because then they want you even less. Yes, I think you do the unspeakable things. Maybe we all have done that. Rushed out of a house crazy, saying things crazy. Yes, I do not think it is a play about somebody who is cuckoo. Absolutely, that's why...
Yeah, we never talked about madness, really.
No.
It's more about the world, the pressure of the world that Blanche is living in, and that, as you're saying, no one understands or speaks the same language as her. And I think the mental pressure of being the sole survivor of the poetic, idealistic age of America is too great, and she fractures. I think it's, and often I think it's very easy to play a mad person, but I think it's more. There's more pathos in watching someone hold on to their sanity.
Yes.
And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but my greatest fear is losing my wits.
Me too.
I think it's, I mean, the whole notion of being encased in a reality and suddenly realising that... But
maybe sometimes it could be a relief, because, you know, there is no hope with anyone, and nobody sees you, nobody cares for you. And then maybe, yes, a doctor comes and says, we'll go to the madhouse, and suddenly you are protected, and you sit down on your bed in the madhouse, and the doctor turns in the door, and you just smile and say, thank you.
Look, I do slightly have that feeling every night as an actor in that final scene. Once the strange lady and the strange man come in, I'm ready for the ice baths and the shock therapy. I just want to get off stage.
When you are going towards a turning point in a play, I mean, are you thinking, pointing to that moment, or on stage, you do it every night, so it just is there?
I think because the architecture that Liv has created around the production is so sure that even on a night, I mean, look, the ideal is to be inside every moment, and one moment opens up the next moment, and it's a very childlike space you have to enter. I think as an actor, I mean, it's very easy to become an infant, I think, and so hopefully, you know, I'll grow out of acting. But you do want to enter that space where you have to trick yourself that you're in a little snow globe, and you don't know your way out. But I mean, it depends very much on the audience's response, I think. And often it's a strange thing, but often when I've noticed with this play, often when doing 8 shows a week, by the time you get towards the 7th performance, you're quite tired. But that tiredness, if you can harness it, is actually incredibly useful in a play like this, because as an actor, your ego wants you to fight that, because you want to deliver for an audience.
What do you want to know beyond this play about her?
I think the best way to get to know someone is to work with them, because the facts of someone's life, I think, can often be daunting. I mean, if I sit down and think about Liv, I sort of, my mouth goes dry and I don't know what to say. But when you've got such a mammoth task ahead of you, somehow the common ground of that, and also because this is such a, I mean, I feel that Liv has invested so much personally in it, as have we all, and we all want to do our absolute best because we admire Liv so much. I think that common ground has meant that we've got to know one another in a way that's perhaps more profound than having summer holidays together for 10 years. It's been a very deep process for me, and it's almost very difficult to articulate the connection, because I think Liv has generously exposed herself in a way and elicited all of us to expose ourselves in a way that's it's a bit like an AA meeting.
She works fearlessly.
yes, and I think it's the only way. It's the only way to work. And I think if you think about the outcome, probably to what you're asking before, if you think about the final scene, then you really do screw yourself up.
Exactly.
You just have to progress bravely through each moment and trust
that the process will take you there.
Yes, it's an exercise in trust, I do think. And, you know, that's what, in the end, what you do is you form a bond of trust, I think.
What did Bergman teach you about acting?
To listen, to be a really good audience, good eyes, careful
Good
with...
eyes?
Yeah, good eyes, trusting eyes, a lot of trust. You must have a lot of trust in the people you're working with. Blocking, he was very particular about blocking. He liked that. And then, you know, he really allowed for the creativity, which belongs to the actors. You know, the difference between, for example, an orchestra, they have notes all the time. I feel it is very important that we don't have that as actors, but I think that the blocking, that's how you move on the stage.
Right.
They should be such that they are always there. You always have your notes. And within those notes or blockings, you create as actors that there's always this fundament, because the orchestra always have it. The violin can be wonderful or less wonderful, but they always have this paper. And I believe in acting, you should also have those. We don't have notes, but we do have movements. Stay with the movements and allow within the movements that life occurs. It gives you some kind of real safety. I don't know if he learned me this, but while I'm saying it sounds really good, so probably it did.
Yeah. Wherever you learned it, you got it somewhere. But what about fantasy? What role does fantasy play?
Oh, everything. And that's again where I think you can talk about other things. Maybe that I learned from Jose Quintero, who I worked with many times. You know, he would tell stories about himself, which in a way also parallel things that happens in the play. And I think that's fine for the actors, because you don't go directly into the personal thing they have to do on the stage. And you don't use words that will be hanging with them, because it shouldn't be your words. It should be their fantasy. I usually say, if you have a rose, you don't make the rose into a lily, but you know how you give the rose everything good, but never step on anyone's fantasy. Never. Not in acting, not in life. Allow people to be who they are, again, which the play is about.
The play's about that too.
Oh, very, very much, you know. I think Tennessee Williams, he wrote somewhere, if they all had recognized each other, this wouldn't have happened.
If they'd accepted each other or recognized.
Recognized each other and maybe even accepted. But you see, if you recognize somebody, it's much more easy to accept. And Stanley is as threatened by her. He comes an intellectual. She's a teacher. She knows everybody, everything, and he's losing the respect of his wife, the respect of who he is. She talks about him like an ape. It's not so easy then, when he really needs to feel he is the king of his little filthy castle, but that for him was important.
Why do we say it's about the death of poetry and idealism and hope?
Well, I think that there's a line that, you know, Liv was pointing out to me again the other day, that Stella says about Blanche, that no one was as tender and as trusting as she was. And I think if you're a trusting person, you trust and hope that things will work out. And I think that, I mean, if you look at climate change, if you look at the facts, there is no hope, unless we do something in Copenhagen, and it's looking less and less likely that it's going to happen. But as a parent, you have these little children that you are charged to move forward into the future, and so you have to hope. And there's a naivete to that. And when someone like Stanley sees that naivete in Blanche, his version of reality wants to crush that. And I think that we're in a really interesting point as a species, where we're confronted with so many facts that are almost overwhelming, and we can't process them, and we hopefully move forward. You know, that's what we do as a species. But I do think that there's a fragility and a trusting sense of idealism and fantasy and dream that perhaps when the play first came out, people didn't respect as much as they do now, because we've really lost that.
We've seen the threat.
And I don't think people even understood how difficult and sad it will be in a world where people can talk intelligently about literature and music and things like that, where it's much better to talk in headlines and things like that, where the brutes somehow are idealized.
The staging of this, the visuals. Someone, I think, said that it was almost taken from an Edward Hopper picture.
It's not almost.
We've pilfered and stole.
Oh, yes. Because as it turned out...
This is not the avoidance of truth, is it?
But he was a favorite of mine. I did another film where I used another painter. You know, you get images. And then it turned out that the set designer...
When you give credit when you do this?
No, because it belongs to what a painter gives us. It belongs to what a composer gives us. We are allowed to be inspired and give on. And the set designer, Edward Hopper, he loved. And then the light designer, I love Edward Hopper. So obviously, you see an image there, and I don't take the way I see you now and put it exactly like that. But something there inspires me, something with the light that was painted in this moment, and you use that. And we call the family who lives above them, we call them the Edward Hopper family, because yes, they are they are not stolen, they are inspired by Edward Hopper, and I think he would be very, very happy for that. And that's what art is about, that we borrow from each other.
Well, I mean, Cate Mitchell, who's a wonderful English theatre director, writes a lot about how if you want to understand stage pictures, then you need to look at the great masters. And she talked about Hammershøi a lot, who's a Norwegian painter that lived...
Danish.
Is he Danish?
He's Danish.
And so that he actually puts figures in a frame. And if you think about a proceeding like the cinemascope, it's a frame that you actually can learn very much about the emotional resonance of moving someone upstage right or downstage left and in relation to one another. They do, not that we consciously read them as something, but they do have a vibration that means certain things with the text.
What I adore about you, and I'm sure Kate does, is that it's like talking to someone who's 15 or 20 or 25. There is a passion that is just...
It's infectious.
It is.
Is it kind of a little stupid?
No. It's overwhelmingly attractive, isn't it? Don't you agree?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely
infectious. Imagine how great it was just to see you here. You know, not that I would have expected otherwise, but, I mean, you have made this transition, you know?
Yeah. Transition to what?
From film to theater to direct. You've made 5 films. You're now in theater. You know. I mean, you have become to listen to her, an extraordinary director.
Nothing will ever be as good in my life. That I know, because I'm 70 years old, and I know nothing will ever be like working with you and then working with the ensemble and the designer. Never again.
Oh, stop it.
No, other things maybe, you know. I might write a masterpiece,
yes,
who knows? But this, nothing will ever be, because... and that's why I'm so grateful to you, not only because of what you are doing, but you gave me this opportunity. And usually it's been the men directors or those things that gave me this. You have given me this, and I wouldn't have had it if you didn't want to work with me. So I'm so
Isn't it amazing
happy.
In your life? You go through life and then suddenly you have live all months saying that to you. You do have to pinch yourself.
I mean, she's saying this was a perfect storm. A play, an actress, a staging.
Well, I don't think there's ever really been a significant production of this play by a woman either. And, you know, you don't want to dwell too much on the agenda.
And so why is that different?
Look, it's
Is it
a
bigger and
bit
better?
like your question saying about, you see it through a Norwegian prism. I don't think one thinks about one's nationality
right,
consciously or
Yeah.
one's
But it's gender.
But it's just, I think that you've enabled, there's a different form of sexuality. I mean, it's such a sexual play.
Yes.
And just by, by who you are and being
Exactly.
a woman, I think it's taken on
Yes.
a really different
So you had things about you
temperature.
that made it clear you could understand this.
But he was gay, and maybe for some men, he wrote like this because he was gay.
What do you mean wrote like this?
Whatever he wrote
Oh, yeah.
in this play. But to us, or to me, because I'm a woman, and to Cate and so, it's not because he's gay, it's because he
He's human?
understood
women?
the
He understood
woman
women.
in a different way, yes, because so much of that is within him. too.
And why was that, do you think?
I do believe
Does that have to do with his
if you choose that
homosexuality?
you would,
Or not?
yeah, if you have that in you, that
Yeah.
I don't know what makes you want to sleep with one instead of another, but I do believe that maybe if you are gay, there are certain things that a woman would understand, not because you're gay, but because you have that drive and that need. I cannot explain this good.
But it made Blanche a more interesting character because he was able to draw.
Yes, and somehow.
And what about Stanley, though?
Same.
Same.
Yeah. I mean, he sees men maybe differently than other macho men when they're writing about
Yeah,
a
this
man.
film made Marlon Brando, didn't it? This was the thing that when he came to New York and did this on the stage, it was...
Yes.
He all of a sudden, people said about his performance in that film, he changed acting.
I mean, you can see, even in that small clip you showed before, how influenced it's a bit like Gerhard Richter. Before actually sort of delving deeply in his work, there were so many modern painters I admired, and then once you really delve into his work, you think, in fact, they're all referencing Gerhard Richter. And I think it really does take several generations before the next breakthrough comes through. I mean, that's the way art works. You sort of all...
All right, but let me just talk for a minute about how acting works. Here is what has been said, that you approach this almost like an archaeologist. You dig deep down.
I mean, I don't know what you found as an actor, but I think you can't perform at all unless you make a point of connection. Between your... There's a little thread that connects, your world and the character's world. And I'm not at all interested in delving into my own past and speaking through the character. I mean, I personally find that really indulgent. But you have to then continue that thread on to the audience, and you have to find a way to... I mean, there's moments of inspiration that you have, hopefully, when you make that first spark of connection, deep connection in the rehearsal room, and then that's hopefully what the camera captures on... in a film. That's what you're looking for, is that first point of connection. But I think that the challenge when you perform a play for months and months and months is that you then have to find a way to reignite that connection every night. And so I think there's a process that happens in the rehearsal room where you find the connection and you almost lose it, and panic and anxiety sets in as you struggle to get up to the surface and breathe again and think, this connection's never going to come back. And then hopefully... And, it did through the rehearsal process, is you find it again in a deeper way.
And there is something with that, because she's so brilliant.
I know, I was watching that.
About,
Oh, God.
About moving.
Yes,
she
indeed.
really
Just
knows
what she
how
just
to,
did
Yeah,
was-
yeah, she really knows that. But
What?
if you want the inner life sometimes, you just make her still. So she does both.
I spend the whole night in duct tape.
No,
strap her
because
down.
then the whole everything. But it's the
Yeah,
architect
right.
person
Yeah.
maybe would like to move
You mean this
more.
sort of the way
but-
she was doing that? If
Yes.
if it had all just come to her face, we would have seen.
And you will, and that's
what the play-
what happens. You
Yeah.
know.
What is your definition of how she saw Streetcar, and how she saw Blanche, and how she saw Stanley, and how she saw Stella? I tried to make that an interesting question.
It's a good question, but it's so difficult to answer. Yeah.
I think it was a lot to do with
should
being
quit, shouldn't I?
misunderstood.
No,
Yes, indeed.
you're wonderful.
I think it was to do with being misunderstood in the end. I mean,
That they
that's,
what? That
they-
just that?
Yes, that they were all speaking quite different languages. And you were very much interested in everyone's perspective.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, you didn't take sides with people. And I think it's so easy in a play like this to say, to brand one person as being, you know, the
evil,
the victim
right.
and you know, the abuser. And I mean, it's so complicated. Whenever you deal into the world of desire, it's all, you know, between consenting adults. So, I mean, you didn't take sides. You were very fair family court.
You were?
Oh, yeah, because they're all good people. They just misunderstand each other. They're good people. There are no bad people.
Are there
in
no
this
bad
play.
people in your world, or just that these three are not bad?
There's some that are a little out of line.
You want to tell us about that while we're here?
No, but in this play there are no bad people. But they do really bad things to each other.
Congratulations on this.
Thank you.
It's great. Every critic loves it. They do. And every audience that I've read about love it.
Thank
in
you.
Sydney, in Washington, and in New York.
You're very nice.
Well, I don't know about that. And to you, my dear. Again,
Thank you.
as always.
Thanks.
Great to see you. Go see it. Streetcar Named Desire. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.